Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yes? Alright. So before I start, let me tell you what this talk is about. Um, my name is Piyush. I currently work at Flipkart, and before this I worked for a long time, or seemed like a long time, 9 years in Google. And this talk is really about identifying opportunities. The premise here is there are a whole host of opportunities which exist in developing and undeveloped markets like India, where when you go build a technology, when you build a solution for those problems, you essentially end up leapfrogging the state of art in that particular problem space. So I'll give an example of that today, but it is not the only example. So before I start, I'll give you another example, which already exists. Um, have you guys ever heard of MapQuest? Anybody by show of hands? People who am I too close to a speaker or something? Oh, okay. So people who have used MapQuest, okay, some of you, right? Google Maps, right? Now here is the interesting thing. There was a time when MapQuest and Google Maps were built mostly for the Western world. The data which drives a lot of these maps is actually the data which takes your addresses and turns them into geolocations. And that data set was created and licensed out by companies like Navtech, which would give it to GPS companies which would have GPS in the cars, and they would give it to MapQuest, they would give it to Google Maps, and then on top of that you would build things like local search, you will build things like directions, and that is what the world did. Now imagine that if you go to a country like India, I actually see a lot of different faces here. Are people from India here? Yeah, so like around, I don't know, 20%. If you go to a country like India, it's very hard to turn addresses into locations because there is no licensed data set. Nobody can give you a data set which you can then build these applications on top of. So Google was struggling with something like that. Guess what they did? They created a platform on which they crowdsourced that information from other people in that location. So people could go to the app and they could say, this location, this is the address. And that would give us a mapping between addresses and geocodes. But the value of the platform, of course, was not just that you can enter this data, but also be able to moderate it, be able to increase the data quality, making sure there's no spam, making sure that the data actually gets better with each edit. Now these kind of things, when they were done, eventually we were able to produce a data set for India, for many such countries, where you were able to do Google Maps as a result. But here is the interesting point. When we did that, it became clear that the quality of data set from crowdsource was better, it was more comprehensive, and it got updated faster than the data which we licensed from these companies. Therefore, Google decided that let's go and make this the default way. We will get data for all locations in the world. Now think about it. This is what this talk is about. There are problems which exist in developing nations, which when you go and try to solve, you no longer have the luxury or the assumptions of underlying infrastructure. Therefore, you have to solve it in a brand new way. And when you solve it in that way, you end up coming with something which actually is applicable worldwide. And that gives you a leapfrogging opportunity. So Flipkart recently, this is a talk about what we have done over the past 1 year, has been able to generate technology like this, which is starting to create a change, not just within India, but worldwide, because of problems which we are trying to solve for India. So as I get started, I'll give you a little bit of background for e-commerce in India. What does it mean, right? So e-commerce in India is huge. Huge in the, not the market share sense, but huge in the impact it is going to have, huge in the impact it is already having. It's a quality of life issue. You know, imagine if you are living in US, if you are living in Singapore, these kind of places, e-commerce is not impacting your quality of life as much as I'll tell you what it does in India. Here, if you order something online, really what you are saving is the hassle of getting out, getting into a car, getting on a train, going to a mall, buying it, and coming back. There, it's easy. You see it on a website, you see it in an application, you purchase, the box shows up at your doorstep, and that is what it is about. You know, when I went to US, I actually went to a very small town to do my master's. Purdue University. It is a small. It's in a small town in Indiana, and when I was there, it was very clear that it did not matter that it was a small town. I could still go to the nearest Sears or Kmart or whatever and get the same quality of shoes or jeans or whatever else like I would in a big city. And that was very different to me. I come from a very small town in India, in a state called Bihar, and there was no way I could have imagined that the same selection, the same quality of products is available to me just as I go out over there in India. In India, it always is like, okay, when I go to the big major city, then I'll go and buy what I need, because the products are just not available. Now think about it from an end user perspective. You are willing to give your cash, you're willing to get the product, but the product is not available. You're a teenager who wants Nike shoes. You want to pay the money. You have the money in your pocket. You want the latest fashion, but it's not available. There is no Nike showroom in your tier 2, tier 3 town. Not only that, there is a guy who has probably gone to one of the bigger cities and bought some and stocked in his shelf. It's probably not the size you want, probably not the fashion you want, probably not the latest version you want or the color. And not only that, it is definitely more expensive than what it would have been from the place it was bought, right? So this is a basic quality of life issue. I want something, I just cannot have it. Not only that, if I go and buy it from that guy and I walk out of the store and I give over my cash, it's virtually impossible for me to go back and say, hey, I don't like these shoes anymore, give me my money back. So that is the kind of difference which e-commerce brings to in places like India. It's fundamentally changing lives. There are other places that changes lives. Supply chain is growing because e-commerce is creating a lot of maturity in supply chain. New jobs are coming up. Sellers are getting bigger and bigger opportunities. If you are a sari manufacturer in Surat, now suddenly you have access to all of the country to sell your goods. If you are a leather shoes manufacturer in Agra, same is the case. If you are producing good things, you have a platform on which you can sell. So there are many different ways life is changing. But India has its own unique characteristics. There's some which are very obvious. Limited reliability. You know, if you are using your phone in India, even if it says 4G, 50% of the time, the speed you will get is 2G. Have you guys seen that? Yeah, if you've been to India, you know what I'm talking about. You try to make a call, and the call will drop in the middle. If your phone lasts battery-wise the entire day over here, it will barely last half a day when you are on an Indian network. There are a variety of reasons why these things happen, but overall, fundamentally, reliability is in scarce supply in the environment which Indian people operate in. The hardware is low end. A lot of hardware at the lowest end, the biggest consumers of those are in India and Brazil and countries like that. A lot of people who did not have smartphones before are now buying smartphones because they have become affordable. Just yesterday or today, there's a news that there's a $5, actually the news came earlier, but there are $5 smartphones now shipping. So that is the level of smartphone adoption which is there in India. And mobile is key to access. There is around 110 million laptops which are there in a population of 1.2 billion. And there are 900 million mobile phones, out of which now 230 million are smartphones, and more are being added. 8 million a month are being added. Think about it in terms of numbers. The number of phones in India which are not smartphones yet is double the population of entire United States, which is the third most populous country in the world after China and India. That is how many people are waiting to upgrade their phones to smartphones. 230 million people have already added phones to smartphones to their device list, and most of the time this is the this is the smartest device in their house. They don't have a laptop, they don't have other smartphones, they probably have feature phones, and they have one smartphone, and that is the smartest device in their household. Now what we see in Flipkart is 2 out of 3 people who come to our website or who come to deal with us are actually coming from a phone. And it doesn't matter that they're coming from a phone, they are buying all sort of things. Flipkart sells like AC, television, fridges, cars, from t-shirts and toys all the way to cars and motorcycles and AC and television, and people are buying on those small screens. That's the device they have, and this is the environment which we are living in. So let me see if this works. All right. Yeah. So the question is, now that we have set the context, majority of the people come to Flipkart on their mobile devices. On mobile devices, you have applications. So the question is, well, how do you build the mobile applications for India? And before I go and answer about how we tackle that, it's worth understanding what the challenge is, why these unique characteristics matter. Now think of a mobile application. It usually is like, I don't know, 10 megabytes in size is the Flipkart application right now, same with Amazon and other such e-commerce applications. If you think about this 10 megabytes, half the time your phone is not actually on 4G, it's on 2G, even if you have a 4G plan, which many of people don't. Wi-Fi penetration in the country is 1.5%. And if you have a 100 megabyte plan, which people can buy, 10% of your data plan will be burnt before you have even started using the application. You don't know how useful it will be, and you already have paid with 10% of your data plan. If you have a low-end device, you don't have much space on your phone, and yet you have to commit 10 megabytes of it before you can actually start using the app. One of the biggest reasons apps get uninstalled in countries like India is because people run out of space on their phone. Now that is the context in which we are building this. And remember, there was a time when desktop used to be like this. For those of you who were using PCs in like 1990s, 1995 and before, you'll remember this very well. You had to run this setup.exe or install.msi or something like that, and then you had to first get it on a CD or some other mechanism and then install it before you could start using the application, right? Then came along the web and completely changed it. But that is not how mobile works today. So that, given the Indian context, is a big challenge. People cannot, they have to commit a lot of their resources before they can start using it, and they actually end up not realizing how useful it is, and this is a problem which the mobile world has created. Now this is the crux of it. This is the opportunity. The assumptions made, if these applications were built in the developed nations, would be, hey, people have Wi-Fi, it doesn't matter. People have high-end phones, it doesn't matter. People have great data plans, it doesn't matter. 4G is working, it's not a problem. None of that is true. Now how do you go solve this problem? So here is what we try to do. I'll give you two examples of two technologies on how we worked on this, but really Flipkart started thinking about, why are we thinking about native applications and why are we thinking about web applications? Why are they different? They used to not be different in the desktop world. They used to be different in the desktop world, then web came about and that problem was solved. Why is this problem coming up again? So we are trying to push for the best of native. The application has to be fast. It has to have things like hardware access. It has to have offline functionality. It has to be able to have all sort of security permissions, look at your address book, get notifications, things like that. At the same time, it should have all the benefits of the web. It should always be latest. You should not be required to download it. You should be able to immediately update it when you need, and it should be essentially small in size. Now how do we make that happen? So there are two different ways we tried it. One is much further along than the other. I'll talk about the relatively less mature one first, and then we'll talk about the one which is more mature. There's more data to share. So look at India as a population, not everybody is the same. So solving this problem just from one point of view, saying, all right, don't install an application, was not the way we wanted to go forward. What we said is, if you already have an app, then let's look at the problems you face. Imagine you are a person who's carrying around an iPhone 6 Plus. Now, you are among the 0.1% of India, and what is the problems you face? You still face the problem that if I push something new, you have to go install it, right? You still live within the same network. It's not about affordability of the network, but it is about reliability. It's about the patience to go and download another 10 megabytes. That hurts the developers also. If you guys have ever built, I know a lot of you are students, but does anybody have any app running in any app store here? All right, you guys, you know the pain, right? If you have an app running in the app store, how hard it is to get a new version adopted by your user base, right? So the developer problem also is there. The end user problem definitely is there. So in these cases, how do we make sure that while you have an app installed, things still work great? And the other side of the world was people who do not even have applications installed yet. They don't have the native app installed. What do we do for them? So let's first talk about the people who have the app installed. How do we make these apps fast and reliable if you have already installed them? Now here's the mechanism by which app development works. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. You first build the app, then you publish it in the store, then users download and they use it, right? Well, guess what goes inside? When you build the app, you're taking all your Java code, you're taking all your layout of how things should be, you're taking all your resources, shoving it into a box. It's called an APK. Then you push the APK out, APK gets downloaded, and that is what runs on your phone. What are the challenges? It's slower to release. You cannot release very easily. You have to actually pull all the changes together and then you push them out. If you have a team of 100 people, it's not really that easy for everyone to push their changes independently. Increase app size. Even if I use 10% of the functionality, I need 100% of the information. It's not easy to modify it. You really have to release a new version, right? So what did we do? Okay, this thing is, so we took the entire application. If you remember the Java code and the layouts and the resources, we broke all of that apart and we said, now this is definitely easier for applications which have very set use cases, and most of the applications fall into this category. The use cases like Flipkart would have like, okay, people will, there'll be search boxes, there'll be buy buttons, there'll be shopping cart, there'll be a wallet, there'll be checkout buttons, so on and so forth. There are many different things which are there. So we broke the entire application into widgets. Then we shipped the app which had a piece of code which we call Proteus. It is a piece of infrastructure. I'll talk about what it is. It's a piece of infrastructure which orchestrates everything, and it has a library of widgets, and widgets within them have the business logic. So there will be a cart as a widget which will actually say, okay, I accept items and I actually can do these operations on them. There'll be a checkout widget and so on and so forth. There are a series of widgets. But after that, there's nothing else in it. And what we do next is when the app starts, all it does is it calls out to the server and says, tell me what I need to do. From there it receives a set of configuration which is in JSON format, which tells it, here are the pages you need to build. These pages have these widgets which are strung together this way, therefore resulting in these possible actions. And here is the kind of actions how they chain together. Essentially the entire app is built on the fly using these widgets. Now all the individual business logic is sitting inside the application and the infrastructure has been pushed out, but a majority of how things get pulled together stays on the server. Now this breakdown also allows, like for example, the reason you cannot serve all the code out from the server is because companies like Apple and Google will not allow you to have something on the Play Store where the executable is not already part of the system. They want to see what that application does before they approve it, right? So they will want to examine it, but if you take entire code and you break it into these chunks, your testability goes up, you have decomposed your app a lot better, you're able to test it a lot better, and not only that, your composability also goes up. So now we are able to tell from the server, here is how you pull this together. And that was acceptable to them. So we were the first company to actually get to that point where they agreed, all right, you really don't have to ship the entire app to us in the App Store. Now the result of this is, of course, dev effort has been sped up. We are able to do so much more A/B experimentation. We are able to rapidly change. If we wanted to change something, so long we were not introducing a new widget in the application, we could completely change the application. And the next time you will launch it, you will be able to see it. And also, it's completely cached, just like a normal application. Every time you pull things down, the only things you're pulling down are what are the deltas and layouts. So the startup the first time looks a little bit more, but otherwise everything is pre-compiled and ready for you to render, and you don't see a difference. Your app works as magically as it did before. So that is one side. This, we do not have a whole lot of data from other people on it. We are working on putting this in open source so that more and more people can use and build applications on this. The next one we have more data on, which is about the set of people who do not even have applications. Now what was Flipkart doing earlier was a classic approach. This is, you might have seen this in many places. You go to a website and the first thing they're telling you is, hey, go install our application. Have you guys seen this? Like if you use, LinkedIn used to do that. I don't think they do it anymore. Yelp is another example. I'm sure there are applications over here which do that. That you go to the website and they're saying, oh, go install application. You know how much effort it takes to bring somebody to your own website? There's a whole industry out there, which is about traffic generation. There's a company called Google which makes billions of dollars because it sends people to other websites, right? So there is a lot of effort in bringing somebody to your website, and then the first thing you're telling them is, hey, why don't you go and install something else? That's what Flipkart was also doing. Classically, 96 to 98% of your traffic is lost when you send them from place A to place B, something like this. Flipkart was a little bit better. 92% of our traffic was lost. But imagine the real world scenario of this, right? You walk into a coffee shop and say, can I have a cup of coffee? And they tell you, hey, why don't you go down to this other shop of ours 2 kilometers down the road and have your coffee there, right? 96% of the people don't walk down. Well, why do companies do this, right? That's a question to ask. Obviously, they're not stupid, right? There is a reason why they do this. And the reason is because in the website world, they were not able to give the experience which the native applications do. The touch latency is very high, hardware access is missing, offline access is very, very bad. There is no concept of notifications. We cannot integrate with other data sets like your address book. All of these problems exist in web, which makes the end user engagement very low. This is equivalent to saying, if you sit in this coffee shop, you'll most likely hate your experience, will not be able to serve you good coffee. But if you go there, even if 96% of the people will not reach that other store, the 4% who do will be so much happier that I would rather keep those 4% because their value to us and our value to them is higher. So that is the way this works. But what is the problem? Well, the problem is, again, looking back at the Indian population, right? People have to go and download 10 megabytes of an application, burn 10 megabytes on their disk, burn 10 megabytes in the air, before they even get to use what they came looking for, right? The question was, well, how do we go and solve this problem? So the first realization is, it is not about the app. Stop making it about the application, that, hey, go use my app. It is really about the user experience. It is about what that app is able to do for the user and what you are not within the website. That is where it starts. I think there are some people from Google over here, right? In the audience, I ran into some. Who all? Do you mind? A couple of people. All right. So you probably know this story. So then what happened in Flipkart was Flipkart didn't have a mobile website. So in Google we have there's an engineering person there, Darren Fisher. So Darren and I were talking, and I was talking to him about like, why don't we make websites which are as good as applications? And Chrome and Darren agreed. They said, all right, tell us what do you need and we'll do it. So we went back to our our own work desks, and we came up with these list of 17 different things. We came back to Google Chrome, to Opera, and to Firefox, and said, can the browser add these things within there, within itself, to support building applications which will be indistinguishable from mobile applications, building websites which are indistinguishable from mobile applications. That was the goal. So we came to Google Chrome, Opera, Firefox. Chrome worked very closely with Flipkart. We worked very hand in hand, and we end up building all the features, and we built essentially the app, which I'll show you in a short video here. If it
What does it take to create a mobile experience like no other? It takes pushing the boundaries of design, pushing the boundaries of technology. It takes pushing the boundaries of just about everything. The experience begins right on your home screen. It has interactions that are smooth and responsive, and pages that load fast and look clean. What happens when you're offline? It just works. You can revisit your recent navigations and searches. So, how do you get this experience? Visit Flipkart.com on your Android phone today and simply add this to your home screen. This is Flipkart Lite, a new, exciting mobile shopping experience created with some of the latest technologies.
Now, the reason I wanted you to see this video is because if you see the experience which was shown on the screen is the experience you get when you go on Chrome, I think version 42 onwards, or Opera, I think 33 onwards, I forget the Opera version number. On an Android phone, this is the experience you will get, because those versions of browsers have implemented a series of APIs which we needed to build an app which is indistinguishable. Build a website. See, I keep telling app because there is no difference in our mind anymore. Build a website which is indistinguishable from a native application. And that difference is magical, because I will, one second. Yeah. So here are some of the things. I will tell you the numbers and they'll blow you away. Here are some of the things which we did. The application shell structure, just like we were talking about progressive web apps, I mean, there is a shell structure in which we pulled out information and we populate. That's how we did it. There is a concept in Chrome called service workers, which is essentially background threads which you can give tasks to do. That is a concept which we further enhanced to turn them into scriptable network proxies. Really using that, what you do is you separate the front end interaction from the back end network unreliability, putting everything in the middle where every aspect of the application is understood by the network proxy which is built inside the application, and it knows this widget needs this data and whether that data is available in the cache or not, whether I need to go out in the network and fetch it, is the network really working right now or not, and so on and so forth, hundreds of things. Now that improves the experience quite a bit more, because that is exactly the kind of thing native applications are able to do, and we're able to do that. Hardware access is another thing. If you are able to provide any kind of acceleration which comes from hardware access on your phone, now that is something which browsers should be able to give to the web application and not really be limited for native applications. Notifications, access to things like address book, all of these things were built in, and all of these things are possible for any progressive web application. And above all, remember that 10 megabyte download you have to do. To be able to install Flipkart Lite on your home screen, you only need to download 64 kilobytes. And after 64 kilobytes, there is no difference in you having a home screen icon which launches an app versus launching launching the progressive web app, except for the difference in functionality which has not been implemented on both sides. And that really is where the magic starts to happen. One of the stats which I have not mentioned here is when people were shown our mobile website and told, hey, go install the app, 92% of people did not do that, 8% of people did, right? When people came to flipkart.com and they were told install the home screen icon, 83% of the people installed it. Now imagine 10x more people are installing Flipkart onto their home screens with progressive web applications. What happens after the install? After the install, they are 3x more time on the site. Not only, actually this is even if they have not installed, 40% higher re-engagement. If they have installed, obviously with notifications and so on and so forth, re-engagement goes through the roof. Lot lesser data usage because we only pull down data when we need to, as opposed to loading the entire page, and 70% greater conversion rate. These numbers are starting to rival what our app conversion numbers are. This is like saying that in our coffee shop, we are telling people you don't have to go there, you can be here, and we're finding them equally happy and equally willing to spend money with us and us providing value to them than they were before. So this is amazing because suddenly we have 10x more deployment without a lot of loss in quality. And that is really solving a real problem. But this is not just us. Let me see if the next one comes. This is not just us. There are multiple companies out there which are starting to adopt this technology. AliExpress has started using it, and they have seen 104% increase in new user conversions. Not 104% of before, 104% increase in user conversions. Air Berlin, they have started using it to provide you with boarding pass you can take along with you, download it from the mobile website. Even if you don't have network, your boarding pass is still accessible to you. Washington Post, using this technology, was able to bring down their first page load time from 17 seconds down to 80 milliseconds. And United Extra is an electronics company, e-commerce company in Saudi Arabia, and they saw 4x increase in re-engagement from mobile notifications from browsers and 100% increase in sales. These are some of the just early numbers which really were shared. More and more people are adopting it. And here is the most fascinating thing. In the app and web convergence, this is the movement of the web world. Obviously, there has to be movement from the app world. And a few months ago, Android announced the Android Instant Apps. Android Instant Apps are essentially, if you go back to the world I was talking about where Java and resources and layout all were shoved into an APK, you can access it through a URL. You will bring down the code required to run the experience which that URL was supposed to give you, and you don't really have to install that also. It can be downloaded, it can be run, and it can go away. Now think about it a little bit, right? You are using a URL to pull down some code and run it inside a shell, and then you can discard it. It's the web. What you're pulling down is Java bytecode instead of HTML and JavaScript, but really other than that, the differences are starting to go away. Now this is an example of how leapfrogging can be done by solving problems in the developing world. So that is my talk.